Elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, and my hands were still shaking. Not from nerves. From trying not to cry in the Uber on the way back. My boss's boss, actually, had called me into her office at 4:47 on a Tuesday afternoon and told me I was being promoted to Senior Director of Operations, the youngest in the company's history. She slid a folder across her desk. New title, new salary, a team of 11 people reporting directly to me. She said the executive committee had discussed it for less than 10 minutes because there was no debate to be had. I sat in that Uber and I pressed my palms flat against my thighs and I watched the city slide past the window and I thought, he's going to be so proud of me. I had my phone in my hand the whole ride home. I didn't call him, I wanted to see his face. The apartment smelled like takeout when I walked in. My husband was on the couch with his headphones around his neck, controller in his lap. Paused on whatever game he'd been playing since I left that morning. He looked up. "Hey," he said. "Hey." I set my bag down by the door. I was still in my good blazer, the one I'd worn specifically because I'd had a feeling today might be the day. "I need to tell you something." He picked up his phone, scrolled for a second, put it back down. "What's up?" I told him. All of it. The folder, the title, the salary, which was, for the record, $62,000 more per year than what I'd been making. I told him what my boss had said about the executive committee. I told him I was the youngest senior director they'd ever promoted. I was talking fast. I couldn't help it. I'd been holding it in for 40 minutes. When I finished, he nodded, slowly, like I'd just told him traffic had been bad. "Cool," he said. "Does this mean you're going to be working even more hours?" I stood there for a second. That's your response?" He shrugged. "I'm just asking. You already work late 3 nights a week. I'm gone by 7, so it's not like it matters to me, but I got promoted," I said. "Significantly promoted. I thought you'd be." "I heard you." He picked the controller back up. "Congrats. I'm just thinking practically." I went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed in my blazer, and I called my best friend from college. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She said we were going out Friday to celebrate, no arguments. I said okay. I hung up and sat there for another minute in the quiet. That was the night I should have understood what I was dealing with. I didn't, though. I convinced myself he was just tired. Having a rough week. Distracted. I had a gift for making excuses for him back then. My husband worked in IT for a mid-sized logistics company. He made decent money, not remarkable money, but decent. When we'd gotten married 4 years earlier, we were pretty much even. I'd been a project coordinator, he'd been a systems analyst, and everything felt balanced. Then I got promoted to manager, then senior manager, then director, and somewhere in those 4 years, the balance had shifted in a way we'd never actually talked about. I paid 2/3 of our mortgage. Our car was in my name because my credit was better. When we'd redone the kitchen 18 months ago, I'd covered almost all of it because he'd had some credit card debt he was working through. I didn't mind. He was my husband. That's what you do. But I was starting to notice the way he talked about my job. Not proud. Not interested, really. More like inconvenienced by it. He'd started making comments, little ones, about how I was always on email. About how I cared more about work than about us. Once, at dinner with his brother asked how things were going and my husband said, "She's married to her job," and laughed, and I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. About 3 weeks after the promotion, on a Sunday morning, he sat down across from me at the kitchen table while I was drinking coffee and reading through some documents, and he said he had something to tell me. His mother and his younger sister needed a place to stay. I set down my mug. "What do you mean?" His mother had been renting a house with his sister for the past 2 years, splitting costs. His sister had just lost her job, retail management, laid off, and his mother was on a fixed income, Social Security plus a small pension. They couldn't cover the rent anymore. They had 30 days. "Okay," I said. "So what are you thinking? That we help them find something?" We could help with a deposit, maybe first months. I want them to move in here, he said. Into the guest room. Both of them. I looked at him. Both of them. I looked at him. Both of them. In the guest room. At the same time. It's temporary. That room is 10 by 11 feet. It's temporary, he said again. Just until Kayla finds something new and gets back on her feet. A few months tops. I want to be clear about something. I don't have anything against his mother. She's a quiet woman, a little cold, but she'd never been cruel to me. His sister, Kayla, was a different story. We'd had tensions since basically the beginning, mostly because she had opinions about how her brother should live his life and didn't bother keeping them private. But even setting that aside, even setting aside the personalities involved, there was a basic problem. This was my home. My name was the one on the mortgage, and he was telling me, not asking me. I need to think about it, I said. I already told them yes, he said. I already told them yes, he said. The room went quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. You told them yes before talking to me. You would have said no, so you went around me. It's my family, he said, and his voice had that edge to it that I'd learned meant the conversation was over, as far as he was concerned. What was I supposed to do? Let them end up on the street? I said I needed some air. I took my coffee and went out onto the balcony and stood there looking at the street below for a long time. I kept thinking about the way he'd said it. You would have said no, like my concern for my own home, my own space, my own life, was an obstacle to route around. I didn't fight him on it that day. I know that sounds weak, but I'd been with this man for 6 years. I kept thinking there had to be a version of this that worked. I kept thinking communication, compromise, marriage. His mother and Kayla moved in on a Saturday, 2 weeks after he'd told me. The first week was uncomfortable. The second week was worse. His mother rearranged my kitchen. I came home to find my cabinet organization completely changed. The things I used every day moved to high shelves I needed a step stool to reach. She said she was making it more logical. Kayla had claimed the living room TV as her primary entertainment center and was home all day, which meant when I got back from 10-hour days, I couldn't decompress in my own living room without navigating around her shows and her snack wrappers. My husband thought I was being dramatic. I asked him, calmly, if we could establish some house rules, shared spaces, schedules. He told me I was making his family feel unwelcome. I said I wanted to feel welcome in my own house. He said that was selfish. Selfish. I turned that word over in my head for days. I started staying at the office later. Not because of the workload, though the new role was genuinely demanding, but because the office was the only place I felt like myself anymore. I had my own office now, with a door that closed and a view of the city and a team that respected me. I'd come home and feel the air change the second I walked in. His mother watching me from the kitchen. Kayla barely acknowledging me. My husband asking if I was going to actually be present tonight, as if presents were something I owed everyone in the room equally. The money thing started about 6 weeks in. I'd set up a joint checking account when we got married, separate from my personal account for household expenses. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, that kind of thing. We both contributed monthly. His contribution hadn't changed since we set it up. We'd never revisited it after my salary increased. Which, looking back, was an error on my part. The account had a healthy buffer in it. I checked it one Thursday morning, and the buffer was gone. Not all of it, but close. There was a transfer, $3,400, to an account I didn't recognize. I called my husband while I was still standing in the parking garage at work, staring at my phone. What's the $3,400 transfer from the joint account? A pause. Kayla needed first and last month's rent for a new place she's looking at. She needed, from our joint account, the household account? I was going to tell you. When? After it cleared. Look, she found a place. It's a good place. She needed the deposit and she didn't have it. What was I supposed to do? Ask me, I said. That's what you were supposed to do. Ask me. That money is for our mortgage and our utilities, not to bankroll your sister's apartment deposits. He said I was being controlling. He said it was just money. He said I always made everything about finances. I went up to my office and sat at my desk, and I didn't do any work for about 20 minutes. I just sat there, and something that had been quiet and small inside me for a long time got very loud. I called a friend of mine who'd been through a difficult divorce a few years earlier, not because I was thinking about divorce. Not yet, not consciously. But because she knew things. Practical things. She told me to open a personal savings account that only I had access to and start moving money. Not to hide it, she clarified. To protect it. Document everything, she said. Dates, amounts, what he said, just in case. I did. That same week, I also made an appointment with a financial advisor. I'd been meaning to for a while. The promotion had changed my tax situation, and I needed to think through some things. But I went in with more questions than I'd originally planned. About assets. About what was joint and what was separate. About what marital property meant in our state. The advisor was matter-of-fact about all of it, which I appreciated. She didn't ask why I was asking. She just answered. Meanwhile, at home, things had stopped being uncomfortable and started being hostile. He started going through my phone. He didn't think I noticed, but I did. He'd pick it up when I was in another room, claiming he was just checking the time. But the time was on the microwave, the stove, the cable box, the clock on the wall. I started keeping my phone face down and close. He started making comments about my salary in front of his family. Not proud ones, pointed ones. At dinner one night, his mother said something about how it must be nice to make that kind of money, and looked at me in a way that made clear she wasn't complimenting me. My husband said nothing, just kept eating. I came home one evening, a Wednesday, and found that the home office I'd been using, a small room at the end of the hall that I converted specifically for remote work days, had been cleared out. My monitor was unplugged and moved to the corner. My files were stacked on the floor. Kayla had set up an air mattress in there. I found my husband in the kitchen and I said, very quietly, "Why is my office cleared out?" "Kayla needs a space," he said. "You're at the actual office most of the time anyway. I work from home on Fridays. You know that. You can work from the bedroom." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "I need you to move her things back out of that room. She's already set up. I need you," I said again, "to move her things back out of that room." He set his jaw. "You know what your problem is. You think this is just your house. My name is on the mortgage," I said. I didn't say it loudly. I said it the way you say something you've been not saying for a very long time. He stared at me. Then he said, "I can't believe how cold you've become." He slept on the couch that night. I lay in bed and I stared at the ceiling, and I think I'd known for a while, but I knew clearly now that something had broken. Not cracked. Broken. I called my best friend the next morning. She came over on her lunch break and sat with me at the kitchen table, and I told her everything. She'd met my husband a handful of times and always been polite, but I could see from her face that she wasn't surprised by anything I was saying. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want my house back," I said. And then, quieter, "I want my life back." She put her hand over mine and said, "Okay, then let's figure out what that looks like." The next 2 weeks, I was methodical. I didn't tell my husband anything. I found a family law attorney through a referral from a colleague whose sister had gone through a divorce the year before. I met with the attorney on a Thursday afternoon during a lunch break I told no one about. She was direct, practical, zero nonsense. She told me what I needed to know about our specific situation, what was likely considered marital property, how the mortgage factored in, what my options looked like. I also found an apartment. It wasn't hard. I'd been pre-approved for far more than I needed, and I knew exactly what I wanted. A one-bedroom, a doorman building, close enough to work that I could walk on nice days. I found it in 6 days. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. I told no one, not even my best friend until after. The following Friday, The one day a week I worked from home, the day my husband left early for a standing morning meeting with his team, I hired movers. I'd planned it carefully. I took what was mine, my clothes, my personal items, my home office equipment, the furniture from the bedroom that I'd brought into the marriage, the art on the walls that I'd bought. I left the joint things. The couch, the kitchen table, the shared items. I left a note on the counter that said I'd be in touch through my attorney and that any further communication should go through her. I was out by noon. My husband got home around 6. I know this because my attorney received a call from him at 6:14 that evening. He didn't reach me. I had already blocked his number and added his name to my attorney's contact list as a redirect. His mother and Kayla, as I later learned, were still at the apartment, which now had my husband's name on nothing and my name on the mortgage. I won't pretend the following weeks were easy. They weren't. There were moments, usually late at night in my new apartment, when the city was quiet and the unfamiliarity of the space pressed in, when I felt the full weight of what I was doing. 6 years, a whole life, built together. A version of the future I believed in. But then I'd think about standing in the parking garage staring at my phone. The $3,400. The home office cleared out without a word. You think this is just your house, and the weight would shift into something steadier. Something that held. My attorney filed paperwork within the week. My husband, to his credit or to his attorney's advice, did not attempt to contact me directly. There were negotiations. There always are. The mortgage was a central one. His name wasn't on it, which simplified things in some ways and complicated them in others. He'd lived there and contributed to the household, which the law in our state acknowledges. There was no version of this where it was completely clean, but I'd gone in prepared. I had records. I had documentation. I had a financial picture that my advisor had helped me organize clearly. My attorney knew what she was doing. A few months after I moved out, I was in my new office, my real office, the one at work, with the door and the city view, going through my email after a long day, when I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It took me a second to realize it was my sister-in-law, Kayla. I don't know how she got my new number. The text said, "You destroyed this family. I hope it was worth it." I stared at it for a moment. Then I put my phone in my desk drawer and finished my work. Later that night, I ordered Thai food and ate it sitting on my kitchen floor because I hadn't bought a proper dining table yet. That was on my list for the weekend. My best friend called and I put her on speaker and we talked for 2 hours about nothing in particular. She made me laugh 3 times. Actual laughing, not the polite kind. Before I went to sleep, I stood in my bedroom, in my apartment, with my furniture and my choices on every wall. And I thought about something my mother used to say when I was small. She'd say, "You don't leave things, you move toward them." I'd been so afraid of what I was leaving. I hadn't let myself see what I was moving toward. The promotion had come with a mandate to build a new operational framework for the company's 3 regional offices. 12 weeks of intensive work. A lot of flights, a lot of late nights. I loved it. I loved every exhausting hour of it. I was good at it in a way I hadn't been free to fully recognize before. My divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning. I found out via email from my attorney at 10:23 a.m. I was in a meeting at the time and I read the notification under the table and I felt, I don't know how to describe it exactly, not happy. Not relieved, really. More like when you've been holding your breath for a very long time and you finally exhale all the way, and your lungs remember their actual size. I forwarded the email to my best friend. She called me 17 seconds later. She said, "So what are we doing this weekend?" I said, "I'm finally buying a dining table." She said she was coming with me. That Saturday we drove to a furniture store in her car, windows down, singing badly to a playlist she'd made specifically for the occasion. We spent 3 hours looking at tables and chairs and arguing pleasantly about wood finishes. I bought a table with a natural oak top and black iron legs, seats 6, because I intended to have people over. I intended to fill the space with noise and food and friends and all the things that had slowly disappeared from my life without me fully noticing they were going. The delivery guys brought it up on a Tuesday. They set it up in my dining area. Under the pendant light, I'd installed myself with a YouTube tutorial and more confidence than skill. I put a plant in the center, a small olive tree in a terracotta pot, because I'd always wanted one and there'd never been a right time. I stood back and looked at it. It was a table in an apartment. It was a completely ordinary thing, but I had chosen every inch of it, and there was no one in the world who would rearrange it without asking, or tell me I was being selfish for wanting things the way I wanted them, or make me feel like my own life was something I was taking up too much of. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is just take up exactly the space that's yours. I texted my best friend a photo of the table with the plant on it. She sent back 17 exclamation points and a string of emoji I won't attempt to transcribe. I'm telling you this because I spent a long time thinking the life I wanted was the one I'd already built. I spent a long time making myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating, convinced that was what love required. It doesn't. What love requires is someone who actually sees you, who hears the news you've been holding in since 4047 on a Tuesday afternoon and feels something other than inconvenienced. You'll know the difference. If you're being honest with yourself, you probably already do.